Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to take the dense academic concepts of meeting life challenges and translate them into a really fascinating look at how we process stress. Our main focus is explaining the chapter that outlines the psychological framework of stress so we can finally unpack the real science behind why we feel the way we do.
Here is our roadmap for the psychological framework we are breaking down today. First, the nature of stress. Second, stress appraisal. Third, stress responses. Fourth, the general adaptation syndrome. And finally, coping strategies.
Let's dive right into Section 1, the nature of stress, a double-edged sword.
You know, we often treat stress like this modern-day villain that we just absolutely have to defeat. But let's rethink that for a second. Imagine you're waiting to cross a super busy road on a Monday morning. Cars are just flying by. Are you stressed? Well, yeah, temporarily. But that quick spike in arousal, it makes you alert, it keeps you vigilant, and it makes sure you cross safely. It doesn't hurt you, it literally increases your chances of survival.
It turns out stress is a lot like electricity. Give it just the right amount of juice, what psychologists actually call eustress, and it keeps the lights on. It gives you energy and keeps you motivated. But if you crank that current way too high, you blow the fuse. That is distress, that overwhelming pressure that completely drains us and makes our performance tank.
The real secret here is that a situation isn't inherently bad all on its own. Think about a cricket batsman facing a blazing fast bowler. If you're a number 11 batsman, basically a bowler who rarely bats, that fastball looks like a terrifying threat. But if you're an opening batsman, someone who is trained to smash those hits, you eagerly look forward to that exact same challenge. The stressor is 100% identical. The outcome, though, is entirely dictated by how they perceive it internally.
Which brings us to Section 2, the stress appraisal process.
Because as we just saw, stress doesn't just live out there in the environment. It's a highly dynamic mental state. According to Lazarus's cognitive theory, it all comes down to appraisals. When we bump into something new, we do this quick primary appraisal. We're subconsciously asking ourselves, okay, is this harm, meaning past damage? Is it a threat of some future damage? Or is it a challenge that I can confidently overcome?
When you map out this cognitive theory, you can really see this incredibly complex interaction between the challenges we face and our actual ability to handle them. You've got external stressors hitting you, sure, but they have to filter through your personal characteristics, things like your physical health or your natural temperament. And then you have your resources, like your finances or your social support system. Your ultimate appraisal of stress, it's a highly unique, real-time calculation of all these moving parts.
On top of that, we have to measure the specific dimensions of the stress itself. How you end up feeling highly depends on where your experience falls across 4 dimensions: intensity, duration, complexity, and predictability. A low-intensity, totally predictable challenge, super easy to manage. But prolonged, complex, and totally unanticipated stress, those are the ones that completely disrupt our internal balance and bring on the most severe negative consequences for our system.
Let's move to Section 3, types of stress responses.
So, once we appraise a stressor, our body and mind immediately kick into gear. And the absolutely crucial point here is that we don't just feel stress in one isolated way. It's a total system reaction. Physiologically, your hormones shift. Behaviorally, you trigger a fight-or-flight response. Emotionally, you might feel deep anxiety or fear. And cognitively, you might completely lose your ability to concentrate or start dealing with really intrusive thoughts. It hits everywhere.
That takes us to Section 4, the general adaptation syndrome.
But what exactly happens to your body when that internal electricity we talked about stays surging for far too long? Well, the physical toll of chronic stress is just massive. Researchers estimate that stress plays a key role in 50 to 70% of all physical illnesses. Plus, up to 60% of all medical visits are primarily for stress-related symptoms. It's heavily linked to cardiovascular disorders and completely wrecking our immune systems.
A researcher named Hans Selye studied this intensely and mapped out this bodily breakdown into a fascinating 3-step process called the general adaptation system. It shows how we progress from an initial alarm reaction all the way to complete and utter exhaustion. He found that no matter what the stressor is, whether it's extreme cold, a physical injury, or intense psychological pressure, the human body goes through this exact same universal pattern over time.
When you look at this mapped out, it perfectly captures the visual reality of burnout. If you trace the body's normal resistance, you'll see it hold steady for a while during the stage of resistance, as you fight off whatever is stressing you out.
You might even think, hey, I'm handling this fine. But watch what happens at the end. The resistance dramatically plummets right into the stage of exhaustion. That sudden drop, that represents chronic fatigue, anxiety, and the complete collapse of normal functioning. That is clinical burnout.
Finally, Section 5, Coping and Management Strategies.
Okay, let's pull you back up from that exhaustion phase and focus on some actual solutions. How can we actively take back control? Researchers Endler and Parker highlight that we handle stress so much better through task-oriented coping. That means doing things like scheduling your time, gathering facts, and prioritizing tasks to directly solve the problem at hand. But at the exact same time, we have to actively dismantle our unhelpful habits. Things like extreme perfectionism, avoidance, and procrastination, they might feel like safe coping mechanisms in the short term, but they make us incredibly vulnerable to burnout in the long run.
So, I want to leave you with this final thought to evaluate your own life. Based on everything we've just mapped out today, how are you appraising the stressors in your own world right now? When you look at the pressure right in front of you, is it a genuine threat that's actually going to cause damage? Or is it just a poorly appraised challenge, waiting for an opening batsman to step up and take a swing? Thanks for joining me on this explainer and for exploring the fascinating mechanics of the human mind with me.